Why do you think business was down, let's say, the last 6 months? Is that a decline in confidence, or is it coming off of levels where there was unusual activity ahead of that?
Well, it isn't really down. It's just it leveled off and a little softer maybe now. But, well, tariffs. The tariff situation was a big question mark for all kinds of companies, and still is to some degree. But that was front and center for a while. Now coronavirus is front and center. Something else will be front and center 6 months from now, and a year from now, and 2 years from now. The real question is where are these businesses going to be 5 and 10 and 20 years from now? Some of them will do sensationally, some of them will disappear, and overall, I think America will do very well. It has since 1776.
But you still watch things like railcar loadings very closely.
I watch everything. But I don't do it to make specific investment decisions. But I enjoy it. I mean, I want to know what's going on, but I also don't think that I can make money by predicting what's going to go on next week or next month. I do think I can make money by predicting what's going to happen in 10 years.
All right, well, tell us more about what's going on, just since you like knowing about those things.
Well, as I say, certain businesses depend on weather to quite an extent in retail, for example, in given months. But the big trends you see are going on. I mean, in terms of the movement to online commerce, and I mean, the big stuff keeps moving. But we've got a big investment in the airline business, and I just heard, even more flights are canceled and all that. But flights are canceled for weather. It so happens in this case they're going to be canceled for longer because of coronavirus. But if you own airlines for 10 or 20 years, you're going to have some ups and downs in current business, and some of them will be weather-related, and they can be all kinds of things. The real question is how many passengers they can be carrying 10 years from now and 15 years from now, and what will margins be, and what will the competitive position be. But I still look at the figures all the time. I'll admit.
I want to go through some of these businesses because you have big stakes, and you mentioned airlines, for instance. Let's just start with that. And Delta is a big holding. You have holdings in the other 3 big ones as well.
Sure.
And so how do you assess what's going to happen, and does that change your outlook?
Well, it's going to be terrible, but I've always felt a pandemic would happen at some time. I mean, I've actually used that term, I mean, in describing things that can interrupt the progress of not only this country, but the world. It won't stop the progress of the country or the world. I mean, this is a terrible event that's occurring. We don't know how terrible, and it may not turn out to be that big a deal when we get through, but it may turn out to be a very big deal, and we just don't know, and I certainly don't know, and nobody knows. But there will be other things that happen in the world in the next 5, 10, 20 years. That's the way the world works. It's not a totally even course. The progress of mankind has been incredible, and that won't stop. I mean, you flew out here, yesterday or today, and you flew over a country that 250 years ago, there wasn't anything here. That's only 3 of my lifetimes, and there wasn't anything here. And now you've got all these bountiful farms, and you've got 260 million vehicles in the country, and you've got 80 million owner-occupied homes, and you've got 155 million or whatever it is, million people working. And I mean, it's incredible. I went, when I had a medical check the other day, I went to incredible medical facilities that are just 2 or 3 minutes from here, and that wasn't here. Wasn't even here 100 years ago, and so we keep making progress. We haven't forgotten how to make progress in this country, and we haven't lost interest in making progress, and that will benefit to varying degrees all kinds of people, including around the world. But there will be interruptions, and I don't know when they will occur, and I don't know how deep they will occur. I do know they will occur from time to time, and I also know that we'll come out better on the other end.
So it doesn't sound like you're selling airline stocks today.
I won't be selling airline stocks. business, and I may be wrong, and I hope I'm wrong, but I think it changed in a very major way, and it's obviously changed in the fact that the four companies are each going to borrow, perhaps an average of at least 10 or 12 billion each. Well, you have to pay that back out of earnings over some period of time. I mean, you're 10 or 12 billion dollars worse off if that happens, and of course, in some cases, they're having to sell stock or sell the right to buy a stock at these prices, and that takes away from the upside down. And I don't know whether 2 or 3 years from now that as many people will fly as many passenger miles as they did last year. They may and they may not. But the future is much less clear to me about how the business will turn out through absolutely no fault of the airlines themselves. But something that was a low probability event happened, and it happened to hurt particularly, whether it's the travel business, the hotel business, the cruise business, the theme park business, but the airline business in particular. And of course, the airline business has the problem that if the business comes back 70% or 80%, the aircraft don't disappear. So you've got too many planes, and it didn't look that way when the orders were placed a few months ago, or when arrangements were made. But the world changed for airlines, and I wish them well. But it's one of the businesses we have. We have businesses we own directly that are going to be hurt significantly. The virus will cost Berkshire money. It doesn't cost money because our stock and various other businesses moves around. I mean, if XYZ, which is, say, is one of our holdings, and we own it as a business and we like the business, the stock goes down 20 or 30 or 40%. We don't feel we're poorer in that situation. We felt we were poorer in terms of what had actually happened to those airline businesses, just as if we'd owned 100% of them. So that explains those sales, which are relatively minor, but I want to make sure that nobody thinks that involves a market prediction. And that pretty well wraps it up for
First question, though, comes from one that just came in based on the comments that you were actually saying. This is a question that comes from William Lewis. He said, please, did I understand correctly, Mr. Buffett, to say that Berkshire Hathaway sold its interests in 4 different airlines? And if so, can you name them? Can the names of those airlines be identified?
Yeah, I wouldn't normally talk about it, but I think it requires an explanation, and it requires an explanation that means we were not disappointed at all in the businesses that they were being run and the management, but we did come to a different opinion on it. And they're the 4 largest U.S. airlines. It's American Airlines and Delta Airlines and Southwest Airlines and United Continental. And I think collectively they probably are at least 80% of the revenue passenger miles that is flown in the United States, and they have significant international flying too, excluding Southwest. So we like those airlines. But we don't. I like the world has changed for the airlines, and I don't know how it's changed, and I hope it corrects itself in a reasonably prompt way. I don't know whether the Americans will have now changed their habits or will change their habits because of an extended period, if it happens that we're semi-shut down in the economy. I don't know whether the trends toward what people have been doing by phone. I mean, it's been 7 weeks since I've had a haircut. It's been 7 weeks since I more than 7 weeks since I put on a tie or anything. I've been just a question of which sweatsuit I wear. So who knows? Who knows how we come out of this? But I think that there's certain industries, and unfortunately, I think that the airline industry, among others, that are really hurt by a forced, in fact, shut down by events that are far beyond their control. Greg, would you like to add anything to that?
Really nothing to add, Warren.
Okay. Well, we got another Charlie here.
I didn't intend to use that as a line, but you've covered it well.
Yeah, we would have bought other airlines too, incidentally, but those were the 4 big ones, and those ones we could put some money into, and we put whatever it was, $7 or $8 billion into it, and we did not take out anything like $7 or $8 billion, and that was my mistake. But it's always a problem if there are things on the lower levels of probabilities that happen sometimes, and it happened to the airlines, and I'm the one who made the decision.
But Warren, just to clarify on his question, he asked, did you sell your whole stake in all 4 of those
the answer is yes. Yeah, when we sell something, we sell something, very often it's going to be our entire stake. I mean, we don't trim positions or that's just not the way we approach it any more than if we buy 100% of a business, we're going to sell it down to 90% or 80%. I mean, if we like a business, we're going to buy as much of it as we can and keep it as long as we can. But when we change our mind,
the next question.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. When you change your mind?
Well, when we change our mind, we don't take half measures or anything of the sort. So I was amazed at how, frankly, now we were selling them at far lower prices than we paid, but I was amazed at the volume. Their airlines always trade in large volume relatively, but we have sold the entire position.
Long-term policy of Berkshire to not sell or close any ongoing subsidiaries as long as their business prospects warrant a money hole. Over the last year, he points out the sale of Berkshire Hathaway Media, and then Charlie's comments from that interview saying that several small Berkshire subsidiaries will not be opening when the coronavirus lockdown is lifted. So should shareholders assume that Berkshire has now changed its long-term policy in regards to keeping underperforming subsidiaries around?
I think that policy was spelled out for maybe 30 years or so in an addendum in the annual report that we have said that if a company or if an operation, we think its prospects are that it will continually lose money in the future, that we will certainly we'll try to sell it to somebody else. But one way or another, we will not continue to hold it. And that is not a new policy, and it's not been changed. You can say, in effect, we did that with the airline industry to some extent. If we owned all of an airline now, it would be a tough decision to decide whether to sustain billions of dollars in operating losses when you know, A, you don't know how long it's going to happen or occur, and secondly, you know that it's very likely that there'll be too many planes around, and we know what happens in airline pricing when load factors go down and there's an oversupply of airline seats. So, you know, we didn't have to make that decision in terms of our own operation on it, but we did make a decision that's a very tough management decision to make. And the government, of course, well, they've had the first wave of financing for the airlines, but to the airlines' credit, they have very aggressively raised money. I mean, it's amazing to me what a good job they've done of that. And in the case of, I think in the case of three of them, no, two of them, but there may be more coming, that they've raised equity money too. I mean, they are saying to the debt holders and investors, you've got to put more money into this business if we're going to be able to continue. And the government's done it, and private sources have done it, and it's going to. It's exactly the right thing for the managements to be doing, but whether it makes sense, we'll find out for the investors.
Asked a question about flight safety, but perhaps this year is somewhat topical given the 737 MAX controversy. The New York Times spoke to engineers who said that Boeing explicitly designed the MAX in a manner that allowed airline customers to avoid paying for simulators to train their pilots. Do you expect the worldwide regulatory and commercial response to the MAX's problems to result in increased demand for flight safety simulators? And could you please more generally discuss flight safety's competitive position and growth prospects?
Yeah, well, flight safety is, their specialty would be with corporate pilots. They train our NetJets pilots, for example. They have a major facility with simulators for that. I don't think what's happened with the 737 MAX will have any particular effect. I mean, we have, I don't know how many of the Fortune 100 companies that we do business with, but it's a very significant percentage, and they train their pilots with flight safety because we've got the talent and the simulators like nobody else has for that business. And Charlie, didn't you have that friend of yours that was trying to get Al Yoshi to pass him when he shouldn't? Well, you remember that story of your friend that wanted to have flight safety?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, credit. Why don't you tell me? I mean, Al Yoshi, who started flight safety with a few $1,000s and a little visual simulator or whatever it may have been at LaGuardia. I mean, he really cared about saving lives, and he made a lot of money in the process, but he was dedicated throughout his lifetime to truly train better pilots and reduce the chance of accidents dramatically. It was a mission with him, and that spirit still continues. And as I say, we've got I can't tell you the percentages, I don't know, but I know it's very high of certainly the corporate business. We have government business, we have some airline business and all of that, but I don't expect any great change in the flight training business. But tell them about your friend, Charlie.
Well, of course, people pass those tests with flying colors, and some of them just barely pass. And one of my friends just barely passed, and they called me and told me it's an art in the business.
Yeah. Flight safety would not.
They care about everything. They watch the details.
They care, and those simulators can cost over $10 million. I mean, and they're dedicated, obviously, to a given model of plane. You might find it interesting at NetJets. At NetJets, our pilots only fly one model. I mean, most charters and all those, I'm sure initially they could fly other models and all of that, but we just want them. We want them to be flying one model, and we give them a maximum amount of training annually. And when I bought the company for Berkshire in, I think it was 1998 or thereabouts, the thought obviously bothered me that I would have a significant percentage of people would be friends of mine that were using it, and you'd hate to have anything happen. I use it, my family uses it, our managers use it, and there's nobody that cares more about safety. But I don't see than at NetJets. It's a first-class operation. And
it never killed a passenger. They had one pilot who hit a glider at 16,000 feet, and it was kind of a difficult landing.
It was more than a difficult landing.
They never killed a pilot. It was a woman pilot, yeah.
She was fine the next day. The co-pilot was kind of taken out of operation probably, but this woman ended up almost with the control panel in her lap because this guy had turned off his battery and hit one of our Hawkers. And she had one shot at the runway, and she brought it in, and we've had some remarkable training and pilots there. And, you should ask for her if you're flying on NetJets.
Comes from Eric LaFont, and it's directed to Greg. He asks, how is Precision Castparts handling the severe slowdown in the aerospace industry?
So very consistent with everything we've just discussed, which is obviously a large part of their business is the aerospace industry. And it can really be broken into three areas as we do in our queue, but two are being impacted. The defense contract business remains very sound and strong within Precision Castparts. But if you look at the large body aircraft, the aircraft that they use within the regional jets, that business will move directly with the demand there and the jets that are ordered longer term. So Precision Castparts is literally, as we speak, continuing to adjust their business relative to the demand that would come out of Boeing. They would be having weekly calls with Boeing, recognizing what are the production orders there and adjusting the business accordingly.
Yeah, Boeing raised $25 billion just a day or two ago, and they raised $14 billion before that, and a year ago they felt they were in a fine cash position, and I understand how all that happened. Airbus has had the same situation. They've made some comments recently within the last week, the fact that, they really don't know what their future is. And I don't know what their future is. We're gonna have aircraft in this country. We're gonna be flying, but the real question is whether you need a lot of new planes or not, and when you're likely to need them, and it affects a lot of people, and it certainly affects Precision Castparts. It affects General Electric. It obviously affects Boeing, it is a blow to essentially have your demand dry up, and it goes up in the chain, and the aircraft manufacturers didn't bring it on themselves. The airlines didn't bring it on themselves. Precision Castparts didn't bring it on themselves. General Electric didn't. It's basically that we shut off air travel in this country, and what that does to people's habits, how they behave in the future, it's just hard to evaluate. I don't know the answer, but we do know that it will have an effect on Precision Castparts, and how severe it will be, it depends on the same sort of variables that are hitting Boeing and you name the company in aircrafts, and aircraft's a big business. And this country's good at it, incidentally, too. I mean, if you think about Boeing, it is one hell of a company, and it's important. It's a huge exporter, and it affects a lot of jobs, and some of them are with us. And we hope for the best, and we wish everybody the best, obviously, and we wish ourselves the best in it. But part of it is certainly out of our control. Right.